hadn't spoken to Adam in years. The breakup was messy, one of those slow burns where both sides were too proud to apologize, but too hurt to ever truly let go. Still, when he reached out through a simple message on Facebook, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of curiosity and nostalgia. It had been years, but I remembered the good times. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe we could finally clear the air. He was just an ex, right? And I wasn't some naive teenager anymore, clinging to old hopes and past mistakes. I had grown. I had learned. And it felt nice, catching up with him. A few messages later, we were reminiscing about the stupid little things we used to do. The inside jokes, the places we used to hang out, the dreams we'd shared. It felt like no time had passed at all. As our conversation drifted from the trivial to the more meaningful, I felt a rush of old feelings, those feelings that I had carefully buried after the breakup. Then came the idea. It seemed so innocent at the time. "Let's take a selfie," Adam said. "You look good, Jess. I want a picture to remind me of this." At that moment, it didn't seem like a bad idea. It didn't feel like a trap. I didn't even think about the potential consequences. My finger hovered over the shutter button, and then it was done. The photo, just the two of us, a smile on my face that felt both genuine and a little forced, was clicked. I posted it on my Instagram with a simple caption, "Catching up with old friends." No big deal, right? A harmless moment, something that didn't carry the weight of history or broken promises. It was just a picture. But that's when the storm started. At first, it was a couple of likes, a few comments from friends who had always known Adam and me were close. Then, the notifications started coming in faster. Comments. Direct messages. And not just from old friends, strangers, too. People who were following my Instagram because of random hashtags or mutual connections. Suddenly, my phone was buzzing with messages and alerts. Some were just curious, asking if Adam and I were back together. Others were downright judgmental, insinuating things I hadn't even thought about. There were some nice comments, sure, people telling me it was good to see me reconnecting with him. But they were drowned out by the loud ones. The opinions. The unsolicited advice. My brother, Ethan, was the first to call me. "Jess," he said, his voice tight, "what the hell is this?" I sighed, feeling a wave of guilt rush through me. Ethan had never been a fan of Adam, and maybe for good reason. I had told myself I'd moved past it all, but deep down, I knew Ethan had always been there, watching over me, trying to protect me from mistakes. He knew what Adam had done to me before, he didn't forget the way Adam had walked away without explanation when things had gotten too hard. "It's just a selfie, Ethan," I said, trying to downplay the situation. "It's nothing." "Nothing?" Ethan's voice rose. "You've got people commenting on your relationship like it's some kind of announcement. You know this isn't just nothing. It's a goddamn mess, Jess. I thought we agreed you were done with him." "I am," I snapped, feeling a twinge of irritation. "It's not like that. We're just talking." Ethan didn't respond immediately, but I could hear his breath on the other end of the line. I knew he was frustrated, and I felt it, too. The weight of his words lingered in the air. Before I could say anything more, my phone buzzed again, interrupting the conversation. It was Adam. I opened the message, eager for some reassurance, but when I read it, I froze. He had unfollowed me. No explanation, no apology, just a blunt unfollow. And, to top it off, he had blocked me. On everything. Instagram, Facebook, even my number. "What the hell?" "Ethan," I said, barely above a whisper. He just blocked me. Ethan sighed. I knew it. This was never going to be just a friendly catch-up. He's playing with you, Jess. No, I said, my voice shaking. It wasn't like that. I didn't think it would go like this. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, I could hear the sound of him walking away from the phone. Then, the faintest sound of the door to my room opening. My parents had arrived. Jessica, my mom's voice called from the hallway. Come here, we need to talk. I stepped out of my room, my heart racing. I could see the disappointment in their eyes even before they spoke. Mom and Dad had always warned me about Adam. They never trusted him. They told me to stay away, to forget him, but I had always thought I knew better. I had ignored their concerns and tried to rebuild something that should have stayed buried. But now, standing in front of them, I realized how foolish I had been. My mom, the quiet one, spoke first. Sweetheart, we saw the selfie, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you post that? We knew this would happen. I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain that it wasn't like what they thought. But deep down, I knew they were right. I was playing with fire, and I got burned. It was a mistake, I muttered, staring at the floor. Dad, ever the practical one, sighed. This isn't just about a picture, Jess. It's about your choices. You've been down this road before, and it doesn't end well. I felt tears welling up, but I fought them back. I wasn't some helpless girl anymore, was I? I didn't think it would matter, I said quietly, almost to myself. I thought I was just being friendly. I didn't think he'd block me, or make everything worse. You have to stop, Jess, Ethan's voice came from behind me, sharper than before. You need to stop thinking it's all harmless, because it's not. You're letting someone who doesn't care about you hurt you again. You deserve better than this. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. Ethan was right. I had let my guard down, let the past creep back in. And now, everything I had worked for, everything I had fought to leave behind, was crumbling. The next few days were a blur of messages and phone calls, and not the kind I wanted. It seemed like the entire world had something to say about my photo with Adam. People from high school who I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly started commenting on my posts, offering unsolicited opinions as if their voices carried any weight. And the worst part was, I couldn't escape it. Everywhere I went, every time I checked my phone, it was there. That photo. The notifications. The questions. The whispers. I blocked Adam on everything except one platform, my email. For some reason, I had this irrational hope that maybe he'd apologize, explain himself. Or maybe just give me an answer. But I wasn't holding my breath. And still, every time I checked my inbox, it was like I was searching for something that didn't exist. Every message was empty, even if it was from a friend or family member who thought they were helping. I didn't need help. I needed to understand why he'd done what he did. Why, after all these years, he would block me without a word. I tried to move on, to focus on other things, but everything felt suffocating. Work didn't help. I had a job in marketing, sitting at my desk all day, trying to come up with ideas that could bring in clients, but every time I picked up my phone, my mind wandered back to the same place, Adam. I felt like I was losing control of my own thoughts. One evening, I decided to take a walk. Maybe some fresh air would help clear my mind. I walked aimlessly around my neighborhood, the cool autumn air biting at my skin. The trees were shedding their leaves, and the streets seemed quieter than usual, as if they were reflecting my internal state. Every step I took felt like a step towards something I couldn't name, something that I didn't want to confront. I passed by a small cafe, and for a moment, I considered going in. A warm cup of tea might help me feel grounded. But when I turned to look inside, I saw someone sitting at the window, someone who looked just like Adam. My heart skipped a beat. My stomach clenched. My first instinct was to walk away, to keep moving. But I didn't. I didn't know why, but I walked in. I hesitated for a moment at the door before pushing it open. The little bell above the door jingled, and the warmth of the cafe wrapped around me. I scanned the room quickly, trying to spot him again. And then I saw him, sitting in the far corner, his back to the window, his eyes focused on the screen of his laptop. It wasn't like I could turn around and leave now. I had already stepped in. My legs felt like they had a mind of their own as they carried me toward him. I sat down at the table across from him, not saying a word. The moment my body settled into the chair, Adam finally looked up. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something there, something I hadn't seen in years. Regret. Guilt. Maybe even longing. But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar mask he wore whenever things got complicated. "Jess," he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. "I didn't expect to see you here." I didn't know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to ask why he blocked me? Or maybe I should act like everything was fine. Pretend like the last few days didn't happen? "So, you're still blocking me on everything?" I finally asked, my voice more cold than I intended. Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not like that, Jess. You have to understand." "No, I don't," I shot back, leaning forward. "I really don't understand. Why block me without any explanation? Why make everything so complicated again?" He looked down at his cup, avoiding my gaze. "It's not personal. It's just, things between us are never simple. I thought we could reconnect, but every time I think about it, I realize it just makes everything worse." "Worse?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think you can just show up, act like nothing happened, and then disappear again without any consequences?" Adam's eyes flickered to mine, and for the first time since this conversation started, there was something real in them, vulnerability. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said quietly. I never really understood what we were. Or what we could have been." I leaned back in my chair, processing his words. They stung, even though I knew he was right. He never understood what we were. He never fully committed, always held something back, always made me feel like I was waiting for him to choose me. I thought things had changed, but clearly, they hadn't. "Adam," I began, my voice softer now, "I don't know what you want from me. But I can't keep going in circles with you. I can't keep waiting for you to decide whether or not I'm worth your time. I deserve better than that." His face tightened, but there was no anger, just a deep sadness that lingered in his eyes. "I know. And I'm sorry. But I think you're right. I don't think I can give you what you deserve." For a moment, there was silence. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and I felt like I was suffocating under the pressure of it all. I wanted to say something, to yell at him, to ask why he had to hurt me again, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I stood up, unable to stay in that moment any longer. "Goodbye, Adam," I said, my voice shaking, but steady. This time, for real. I didn't look back as I left the cafe. I couldn't. I wasn't sure if the conversation had given me closure or just another layer of hurt, but I knew one thing for sure: I had to let go. I had to stop holding on to something that had never truly been mine to keep. I had to stop chasing a version of him that didn't exist. The world outside seemed brighter as I walked down the street. It wasn't because everything was fixed, it wasn't. But it felt like I had taken a step forward, away from the past. And maybe that was the only thing I could do for myself. When I got home, I went straight to my room and shut the door behind me. I sat down on my bed and pulled out my phone. No messages from Adam. No notifications. For once, I felt like I could breathe. But then, the thought hit me like a wave: what if I'm still not enough? The days that followed were an odd mix of peace and confusion. I tried to move on, told myself I didn't need to think about Adam anymore, but it was like trying to ignore the constant buzz of a fly around your head. No matter how many times I swatted it away, it always found its way back. I spent hours at work, trying to drown myself in emails and meetings, pretending everything was fine, pretending like I hadn't just confronted my past. But every time I glanced at my phone, there was that empty screen. No messages from Adam. No apology. No explanation. It was as if the conversation never happened. And I was left wondering if I had imagined it all, if everything between us had ever really meant anything to him. I was at a breaking point when Sarah, my closest friend, called me one afternoon. She'd been checking in on me, trying to be supportive, but I could tell she wasn't buying my "I'm fine" act. "Jess, we need to talk," she said, her tone serious. "I'm fine, Sarah," I responded, already knowing where this was going. "No, you're not," she shot back, blunt as always. "I get it. Adam is complicated. But you're not going to heal if you keep pretending everything's okay. You're better than this. Don't let him do this to you." Her words hit me harder than I cared to admit. I thought I had it all under control, that I was handling things in my own way. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I was lying to myself. I'd been stuck in this weird limbo, not really letting go of Adam but not really moving on either. I don't know what to do, Sarah," I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. "I thought things could be different this time. But it's like I'm invisible to him." "You're not invisible, Jess," Sarah said, her voice softening. "He's just not looking. And that's on him, not you." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It felt like she was speaking the truth I didn't want to hear. But even knowing it, I didn't feel like I could just let go. The connection we'd shared, the history we had, it was too much to ignore. It wasn't something you could just erase with a few clicks of a button. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I whispered, more to myself than to Sarah. "You can," Sarah insisted, her voice firm. "You're strong. You just need to stop letting him have this power over you. If he really wanted to be in your life, he would be. But he's not. And that's not your fault." I didn't answer. I just hung up the phone, letting her words settle in my mind. She was right, I knew that. But it didn't make the pain any less real. It didn't erase the moments we'd shared or the hope that still lingered, like a shadow, in the back of my mind. The next morning, I woke up determined to put the past behind me. I'd done enough crying and second-guessing. I had to move forward, for my own sanity. But as I was getting dressed, I noticed something strange. My phone was buzzing again. A new notification. My heart skipped a beat as I grabbed it, already knowing who it was. It was Adam. I stared at the message for a long moment before finally opening it. There was no apology, no explanation, just a single line of text: "I need to talk. Can we meet up?" The message felt like a punch in the gut. It was too soon. It had only been a couple of days since our last conversation, and I had barely begun to process what had happened. I knew I should ignore him. I should delete the message and move on. But for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I typed back, my fingers trembling as I did, "What do you want to talk about?" He replied almost instantly, "Everything. Please." I know I messed up. The desperation in his words was almost enough to make me give in, to believe that maybe this time, he was being genuine. But then I remembered the weeks, the months, the years of wondering when he would finally be ready, when he would finally give me the answers I needed. And each time, he had walked away. This time couldn't be any different. But I didn't delete the message. Instead, I stared at it for what felt like hours, weighing my options. Was I ready to see him again? To face the person who had caused me so much confusion, so much pain? And even if I did meet him, what would happen? Would he just walk away again, leaving me with even more questions? I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought meeting him would give me the closure I'd been longing for. Or maybe I was just too afraid to admit that part of me was still waiting for him to choose me. After what felt like an eternity, I finally typed back, "Fine. I'll meet you. But I'm not making any promises." The message was sent before I could change my mind. The day of the meeting arrived with a heavy sense of dread. I had no idea what to expect from Adam. Would he show up? Would he finally explain himself, or was this just another one of his games? I tried not to overthink it, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. When I walked into the coffee shop, I saw him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, looking out the window. There was no smile, no greeting. Just the same distant look in his eyes that I had seen too many times before. But this time, something was different. This time, it wasn't just me sitting across from him. It was the weight of all the years we'd spent apart, the silence, the pain. He looked up when I approached, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability in his eyes that I had been waiting for. "Jess," he said softly. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond immediately. I just sat down, folding my hands in my lap. The silence between us felt like it was suffocating, like there was so much unsaid, but neither of us knew how to break through it. "I don't know where to start," Adam said after a moment, his voice thick with regret. "I've been an idiot. I've pushed you away for so long, and I don't even know why. I don't know why I've kept you at arm's length." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him how much he had hurt me, how much he had made me doubt myself. But instead, I just listened. I wanted to know what he had to say. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for. Or maybe it was just another disappointment in a long line of them. "I never meant to hurt you, Jess," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I never wanted to leave you in the dark. I don't know how to be the person you need me to be." I finally looked at him, my gaze unwavering. "Then why now, Adam? Why after everything?" He sighed deeply, running his hand through his hair. "I don't know. Maybe I'm scared. Maybe I'm just tired of running." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of his words hung in the air, but I still wasn't sure what it meant for us. Was this an apology? Was this him finally admitting he had been wrong? Or was this just another attempt to make himself feel better without really changing anything? "I don't know what to do with all of this," I said quietly, my voice shaking slightly. "But I can't keep letting you hurt me like this." Adam nodded, looking down at the table. I understand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually being heard. But even as I sat there with him, something in me knew that this wasn't the end. It was just another beginning. I didn't know what I was expecting when Adam and I sat there in that coffee shop, face to face, finally talking after all this time. Part of me wanted him to confess everything, lay out his reasons, tell me that I had been right all along. But the truth was, as the minutes passed, I realized that what I wanted and what was actually going to happen were two very different things. Adam's apology seemed real. His words were sincere, and I could see that he regretted pushing me away for so long. But there was something missing. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the more he spoke, the more I realized how much of his explanation was just a string of excuses. I wanted answers, not a sob story. I wanted to know why he had kept me in the dark, why he had disappeared for months without a word, and why I had been the last person to know the truth. Adam, I finally interrupted him, my voice a little sharper than I intended. I need to know. What happened? Why did you leave me hanging for so long? He looked down at his coffee cup, his fingers tracing the rim. I was scared, he said, his voice quieter now. Scared of what we were. Scared of how much I needed you. Needed me? I repeated, incredulous. Is that what this is? You shut me out because you needed me? He nodded slowly, his eyes not meeting mine. I didn't know how to handle it. You were everything. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I sat back in my chair, the weight of his words hitting me harder than I expected. But I couldn't ignore the hollow feeling that had settled in my chest. I had been waiting for so long, hoping for something more, for him to finally choose me, for him to finally make the effort. But here he was, offering me nothing but more of the same. More excuses. More apologies. More of the same old Adam. I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around everything he had just said. Adam, you can't just expect me to fall for that again. You don't get to waltz back into my life, say a few nice words, and expect everything to be fine. That's not how this works. I know, he replied softly. I don't expect it to be easy. I don't even expect you to forgive me. But I want to try. I want to be here. For you. If you'll let me. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe him, to give him another chance. But another part of me, perhaps the stronger part, knew that I couldn't keep going down this path. I couldn't keep letting him into my life only for him to leave again when things got tough. I wasn't some kind of safety net for his emotional turmoil. I wasn't his second choice. You don't get to come back into my life just because it's convenient for you, I said firmly. You don't get to use me as your emotional crutch whenever you feel like it. I deserve more than that. Adam's face fell, his expression pained. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered, as if he didn't know what else to say. I took a deep breath, my chest tight with the weight of everything that had built up over the past few days. I don't think I can do this anymore, Adam. His eyes widened. What? You can't just walk away after everything we've been through. You can't just forget. No, I'm not forgetting, I cut him off. But I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep hoping you'll change, hoping you'll choose me. You've had your chance, and I've given you more chances than I should have. But I'm done waiting for someone who isn't ready to love me the way I deserve. The silence between us stretched on, and I saw the realization hit him like a punch in the stomach. This wasn't some moment of reconciliation. This wasn't a happy ending where everything fell into place. This was me, finally standing up for myself, finally saying the things I had been too afraid to say for so long. "I'm sorry, Adam," I whispered, my voice breaking despite my resolve. "But I think this is it." He didn't say anything. He just sat there, looking at me, his face a mask of disbelief. He probably thought I would give in, that I would let him pull me back in with a few more words. But I had finally learned my lesson. I couldn't keep going in circles. I couldn't keep letting him make the decisions for me, let him control my emotions. I stood up from the table, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't what I had hoped for, but it was the right decision. I wasn't going to let myself be stuck in the past anymore. I wasn't going to keep clinging to something that wasn't meant to be. I had spent so much time trying to make sense of Adam, trying to fix something that had never been broken to begin with. I had thought that maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. But the truth was, I didn't need him to complete me. I didn't need him to fix me. I had spent too long letting him hold the reins of my emotions. I was tired of waiting for him to decide if I was worth his time. As I stepped out into the cool air, I took a deep breath. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long finally lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. I didn't need Adam's validation. I didn't need him to make me feel whole. I was enough, just as I was. And that was the moment I realized I was finally ready to move on. No more waiting. No more wondering. No more holding on to something that had long since faded. It was time to let go. The chapter with Adam was over. And for the first time, I was finally okay with that.